Good evening, everyone. To this is interesting going live this late.
Late, yeah.
How are you, Kimberly?
I'm glad we're back. Let me say that. I'm doing pretty all right. We had a lot of transitions since we went away. I feel like we had an unintentional break, right? But it
Hmm.
was a natural break because in season one we had 10 shows, and then it was kind of like, okay, life is transitioning.
Hmm.
So I said all that to say that was my long answer for I'm doing pretty all right. I am getting used to my new surroundings and my new job and my new hair and child. It's just all types of new things over here on this side. And I'm excited about this late night hour because I feel like we need to get real about some things.
Yeah,
I put on my comfy clothes because
there we go.
we need to talk. So yeah, how are you?
So I'm doing fabulous. God is just really moving in my life and in my wife's life, and I'm just blessed. I can't complain. And in the midst of this pandemic and the craziness that's going on, I, I have to say that God has still been good, and I'm
Mm.
gonna just continue to just walk in those steps. So yeah. So for those of you that are tuning in, thank you for being here this evening. This is the Whole Child, and this is a podcast that we have on Teaching for the Culture, and is glad to be back. You could check this out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch.
And let me just take a moment and stop and celebrate the expansion that Teaching for the Culture has had. Man, what a difference a few weeks made, huh? Like so many things. So in real life, shout out to you. And you mentioned, your wife's success and being elected for the state house, and there's some phenomenal things happening in the Gooseby gang right now. So I think that deserves an extra special shout out and appreciation because, yeah, the Lord is moving for real.
Amen. Amen. I received that. So Kimberly, what are we talking about today?
Girl, this movie, Cuties. Okay, so first of all, let me admittedly say that I have been very disconnected, right, from the news, from social media. I really decided to prioritize some quiet, right, and
Hmm.
just trying to manage in my mind all the things that I have going on, right. So this movie came across my knowing, I don't know, maybe a few weeks ago, and I remember it just being really controversial. Like people were like, they did not make a movie about twerking, like these little girls, and something. And I never really unpacked it, just kind of planted it like in the back of my mind, like back there. And
Hmm.
then over the weekend, someone said, that movie Cuties came out, right? So I'm like, let me watch, let me see what's up with all of this, because I remember the controversy. And Lord have mercy, I got a lot to say. It's a lot we need to unpack on this here show, because it was a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested to see how many people who are watching watched it. Cause yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's probably gonna be some spoiler alerts. So if you didn't watch it, we about to spoil it all. Okay, so if you didn't watch it, you may want to like plug your ears or something. But we're trying not to get too many spoilers. Like I'm really anti-spoiler, but it's some things that we need to talk about. So
Listen, it's been out long enough now. I'm sorry. We got to talk about it. No, the tea is hot. We got to talk about it.
you're right. You're right. I forget who I'm talking to. So let me say this. The first thing that I can say is that I felt like the movie was clickbait. Like the way that it was promoted was clickbait. And by that, I mean, all of the promotion that I saw, or the articles, or the think pieces, or what have you, were laced with outrage about this movie that was going to show these little girls twerking and how inappropriate it was, and what have you. And that's not really what the movie was about.
Yeah.
Like, that was a part of it, but that was not the story of the movie, right? So that's the first thing that stood out to me. But then also, I didn't realize it was a foreign film. So that added another dynamic. The family that is in the film is Senegalese, and the setting is in France. So I think some of the culture things that the way we process things here in America, of course, are very different from the way they do things in Europe or in French culture. So that added an additional dynamic that I didn't expect, that made me think about things a little bit differently than the context in which it was presented. So I know, like, the internet and the way that people do things is your specialty. So what did you think about how it was advertised and how it was put out there?
So I think that Netflix was not intentional with their messaging that they wanted to send out. I think it was one of those things that they just did. I do want to show the cover image that they had originally, and it was taken down after the controversy.
Hmm.
But that was the cover of how they portrayed these little girls and made it seem as something that it wasn't. And you know, I just, people had this outrage for the cover, but I just want to know, where was the energy on the other stuff that's out here?
Hmm.
There's sixth, seventh, eighth grade children that's singing WAP. I, how, are we gonna get to the root or not?
And they're probably choreographing a little something to it as well. Um, so I, again, try not to watch TV, right? But I remember, I can't recall. What is the show where they have the dancing dolls, or D, what do they call them, DD4L, or is it called Bring It or something? I can't remember the name of it. I'm probably saying the wrong show. But anyway, what I'm gonna say is, this stand dance culture that's out right now with our little girls. Um, it's something we do all the time here in America. So I don't know why we were acting like this was different, right? So even with that cover, where they are sitting there in bring it, thank you, Kiki. Even when they're sitting there in the dance outfits, like, and it looks like the movie is going to be about twerking, we got all of these shows about girls twerking all the time, and they're still on the air. So why is that not an issue? But this would have been, if that was the movie, if that was what the movie was about. That wasn't even what the movie was about, but if it was, to your point, it's selective outrage. Yeah. So where should we begin? Let's provide the setting. So the movie is of Jesus. I can't talk. See, that's what happens when it's late at night. The movie is about an 11-year-old girl, Senegalese girl, named Ami, who is a first generation European, right? So again, they live in France, and she is growing up in trying to navigate these two cultures. So she's trying to navigate her Senegalese roots and the culture that her family has established. And she's also trying to navigate going to school, right? So 11th grade, you're about 11 years old, you're about sixth grade. So middle school, basically. And she's going to school in France. She's the first generation to be going to school, right? So her mom, her parents weren't educated in France. Any of the elders in her family were not. So she's the first in her family to have to navigate these two worlds. And it's really about how she finds acceptance um, while she's trying to navigate this space, right? That wasn't a spoiler, right?
No.
I'm trying. I'm trying. Okay, so trying. I don't want to ruin it for you guys. So, what I will say that I absolutely related to in the movie, having been a middle school educator and seen countless 11-year-old girls, is that it was very true to how girls behave. So, some of the things that we saw was like the mean girl culture, which unfortunately for some, they don't abandon that lifestyle even when they grow older, right? But that's another show for another time. But the way that girls operate, right? So with Mean Girls, there's usually a queen bee, and then you have those who are around the queen bee. We can call them worker bees if we like for this analogy. But the queen bee is basically the one who calls the shots. And the queen bee is the one that keeps everybody else in check, right? So all the other girls defer their power to submit their power to this queen bee, right? So in this movie, that was happening. There's a clear queen bee, and we see Ami truly allow herself to be humiliated and made fun of and bullied, all in the effort to be accepted by this group of girls. And that's not, even though this happened in France, that's exactly what happens here in the States is our girls allow themselves to be in situations because they want to be accepted. And I often ask myself, where does that come from? Like, what is the root of that? So when you hear that, like, what do you think is at the root of that type of behavior?
So traditionally is, children that feel neglected, like they don't have a voice. And so they're seeking validation from somewhere, and they'll get that validation from someone that is using and manipulating them for their
Mm-hmm.
own agenda.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I see Bianca put over here dance moms as well. And the reason why that's relevant is because I feel like a lot of times we think that this is a black thing, right? But right now we're just talking about girl things. This is something that happens with girls regardless of their race or ethnicity. This is just a predisposition for girls. And I can think, I have my mentoring group and my 501c3 for girls empowerment. And the whole reason that I started my group is because I wanted to show girls that there's a different way to exist outside of this cattiness that many women still hold on to, right? So I think
Mhm.
about the Real Housewives and Love and Hip Hop and whatever else is out there that I refuse to watch at this point. That what the girls are seeing is the way that you handle conflict is by fighting, by cussing somebody out, by literally trying to destroy someone's life in real life, right?
Yeah.
With no regard for the fact that this is a person that has worth and value. Like it is cutthroat. And they're learning this as they're watching the things that we have on TV, as they're watching women in their lives interact this way. So for me, it was very important to show our girls that you don't have to live that way. Like you actually can have healthy relationships with other girls. Like, like you can see another girl and compliment her. Like you can see another girl be all black girl magic, and you could be like, "Yes, boo, I see you." and pump her up and make her feel better and speak life and straighten her crown without putting it on blast that her crown was crooked. Like there's a way to exist outside of this culture that's there. Um, so I appreciate in the movie that it brought this to the forefront because this is real life. It's real life, and so many of our girls, like you said, are just they're empty, and they feel like they have to go this extra mile to do something to be accepted because no one has taken the time to fill their emotional tank and help them to build their self-esteem. So
And the
then when I
crazy part about
go
the
ahead.
crazy part about all of this though is that that is controlled by an algorithm. Our
Mm,
kids are seeking validation on social media by likes, and they receive dopamine in their system, and it's literally becoming an addiction. There are studies that
mhm.
show that cell phone usage is just as addictive as alcohol and cigarettes, and even some high tolerance drugs.
Yeah.
And we are allowing our children full access and not seeing what they're watching. And it is just mind blowing what is out here on the internet and what these companies are incentivizing, because there's money behind it.
Mhm. So let's talk about that for a second, because I know that's your real wheelhouse, and you know a lot of the things that are happening behind the scenes. So, in the context of the movie, what you just said reminded me of two things. There was a scene in the movie where the phone was taken from Ami, and she lost her whole mind, like she lost it. Um, and when I was watching that, I was like this is real life. There, if we even do a self inventory for ourselves of how many times we actually pick up our phone to check notifications or to check email or to check to see what's going on, like these phones are addictive in real
Yeah.
life. Like this is not a game. So then even more so for our girls and our young people who have underdeveloped brains. Their brains have not fully developed, and now they're being fed by this addictive drug and this addictive attachment. Um, so it's making them feel like you said that dopamine, which is the feel good, and endorphin. It makes them feel like, oh, this is great, this is wonderful. So then you add on top of that the likes, right? And you've talked about this many times before, the clout chasing and how clout is a drug for people, but definitely for our kids within the TikTok culture and the Snapchat culture and the Instagram culture, of how they are literally chasing likes, so much so that they will have pages with pictures, and if the pictures don't get enough likes, they take it down.
Yeah, it's real. So I'm telling parents, please check the cell phone. Like I'm begging parents to have intentional conversations with what your children, who your children follow.
Mm,
It's one of those old school philosophies that we had prior to cell phones, where you wanted to know who your child is connected to because stranger danger.
mm,
Well, you're giving your child access to a whole bunch of stuff. And you know what? Kids are addicted to TikTok, so are predators. So
mm,
we really need to make sure that we're checking the children's cell phone and making sure that we have an open communication, so that way they feel safe to speak about what's happening, because there's kids running away out here, folks. There's kids that are being caught up in sex trafficking, and there's some real dark stuff that's happening on this internet. So a lot of people say that can't be my child. Well, the teen in Oklahoma that passed away because she decided to participate in a Benadryl challenge where she overdosed on Benadryl, her parents didn't think that that was their child either.
yeah. And so, what I've also come to understand, you said a few things. I've come to understand that they have spam pages, right? So they'll
Mhm.
have one profile that their parents or whomever have access to, parents, family members, and then they have a spam page where they do all the things that they don't want anybody to know or find out. So that page usually has some kind of random behind handle, it's not like their name or something, that we would do. So just random characters, letters, whatever. And that's the place that they house this type of behavior, which made me think about, not to cross shows, but to cross shows, The Shy. Did you ever watch it when I told you to watch that episode of
No,
The Shy?
you know I don't watch TV like
I
that. It
know, I know. I was trying to push you out of your comfort zone. So, but there's an episode of The Shy where a girl gets abducted, and they were looking for her. So the parents were like, check her social media, right? And somebody was like, that's not her real page. And they led the parent to the actual, like the spam page where the real her was living. And the parents were like, dumbfounded. Like, what? So as parents, we're thinking that we I got the social media. I'm checking the phone, right? But you're not checking, you don't know what you don't know, right? So you don't know
Mhm.
what to look for. So you can't find it because you ain't know you was looking for it. They have multiple profiles, or sometimes they might not even have a phone. So I see Bianca had made a comment on here about her daughter is 15, and they sometimes, go back and forth about her being on social media or what have you. Well, sometimes the kids don't have their own phone, right? So then the parents' assumption is that because they don't have their own phone, they're not on social media, but they've used somebody else's phone to get on there. So they got a whole profile with a whole life that you don't know about because they've gone around to create this additional or to create an opportunity to be able to have the end in social media. So they have different email accounts, like, and y'all know how easy it is to make an email account. Like, you just put some
Mhm.
things in, right? So that's where all of their stuff goes. So yes, you check the phone, but you have to know what you're checking for. So then the other thing that you said, Bianca, that I wanted to comment on and kind of ride this out, probably for the rest of the time, is that communication piece.
Yeah.
So I've checked the phone, and I see some amens over here in the comments. They're like, uh-huh, this is a real thing, right? So you've checked the phone, you see that there is a spam account. You see that there is something that's happening on social media that's inappropriate. What do we do next?
So parents first need to relax and deep breathe and realize that your child is going to make mistakes, and do not take it personal, and do not react in a way that would prevent your child from opening up. If you go straight to the attack, they will make sure, because there's apps that they can download. In fact, I will put a link of an episode that I did back in October of 2019 of 15 apps that parents should look out for.
Mhm.
There's apps out here that kids can make a hidden vault, where it's another app within an app, to where they
Yes.
have to put a special passcode in order to get access to it. These phones are very, very complicated, and if you're not tech savvy, if you're not intentional with it, it will slide right by you, and you will have no idea. So back to the point though, make sure that you breathe and that you have a calm conversation with the intent of coming up with solutions and
Mhm.
creating boundaries moving forward.
Mhm. So oftentimes, what this looks like, and now I am going to speak to our communities about what this looks like in our households of Black and Brown people, is we find that something inappropriate has happened, and then we decide, I'm about to beat they behind. And then you unleash the wrath, right? So A few things in regard to that. One of those things is a lot of the reason why we are having that response and reaction is because we remember what we were like at that age. And you trying to beat you out of your child. Let that sit there for a moment.
Toxic
You
trauma bonds.
you cannot beat you out of your child, right? So, however you were and whatever hell that you raised as a child, just expect that it's going to come back now with added layers of sophistication because of all this technology, right? But now is your chance. The whole reason why we have this show is about breaking those cycles, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's up to us to not react the way that people reacted with us, right? So that's the first thing is we try to beat ourselves out of our children. But then secondarily, we go off and call them all types of horrible names. Horrible. So this was in the movie as well that just horrible names. Like, so I want you who are watching, like, I wanna unpack this because help me understand what you think is going to be the result of you calling your little girl a whore. Like, do you think she's going to say, "Oh no, I don't want to be a whore. Let me clean up my life. I'm gonna straighten up and fly." Like, what do you think is going? What are you looking for to happen? Well, you calling her all kind of MFers, all kind of bitchs. You sitting here calling her a whore. You just calling her out her name. Done called her everything but her name that you gave her, while you are inflicting pain and trauma on her. Like, what do we expect to happen on the other side of that?
Preach.
So it becomes what happens. Let me tell you what happens on the other side because I'm living proof of this, right? So I remember when I was in school, and any of you all who have followed me for any amount of time know I talk about my childhood was abusive. Okay, my mama. So, um, I grew up in New Orleans and we didn't have like yellow school buses. We had public transportation. And public transportation, if anybody has ever taken public transportation, you know that there's a schedule. However, sometimes things happen and you don't get where you're going on schedule. And God forbid if you have to connect to another bus. Now, if the whole spot is blown up, it's done throwing you off a whole lot, right? So that was how I got home from school. As early as fourth, fifth grade, I was taking a public bus home. So when I was in elementary and middle school, I had an hour to get home from school. And then when I was in high school, I had an hour and a half. The school is a little bit further. However, what I can't control is the bus. So if I got home, I'm talking, it could have been 5 minutes late, caught a whipping, got called all kinds of names, and got told that I was out here in these streets because I was fast. But I was literally just on the bus trying to get home. And I remember like screaming and crying to my mom, like, can you follow the bus? Like, can you just see the types of things that happen? And I was always in private school, right? So the public school kids would get on the bus, they fighting, they acting a fool, or the bus driver pulled the bus over and he's like, I'm not moving this bus to so and so get off. Like, what am I supposed to do? Excuse me, Mr. Bus Driver, if I don't get home on time, my mother's going to say that I'm a whore. So
Yeah.
she would beat me and beat me and beat me, and I wasn't even doing anything. So then one day I said, you know, since I keep getting in trouble for having the sex that I'm not having, why am I going to have the sex? That way, when I get in trouble, at least I'm getting in trouble for something that I did, as opposed to get my behind beat for something I didn't do. And what else it taught me how to do was to be sneaky. So instead of me taking the bus home, I call my boyfriend and he'll pick me up and then drop me off around the corner. So now we have a whole big old amount of time for me to do whatever I'm going to do. And all of that was rooted in the fact that I kept getting my behind beat because I didn't make it home on time because of the public bus. So, what I submit to you, parents, is when you are beating the life out of your children, calling them out of their names, saying all of these horrible things about them, what you're teaching them is that you're teaching them how to be sneaky, right? But you're also giving them motivation to do what you're trying to beat out of them. So, to your point, Bianca, about communication, the goal is to actually have a conversation. Because one thing I can tell you is that they don't know why they are seeking this clout. Like they can't say to you without the help of you facilitating their understanding, I am seeking acceptance on Instagram because I feel empty inside and I feel like nobody likes me and I don't like myself. So I find a lot of enjoyment when people like the pictures that I put up. And I notice that the racier the pictures, the more likes I get. And then that makes me feel better because I'm empty. They're not going to say that to you because they don't know. What they do know is what makes them feel good. The reason they don't know how to communicate that to you is because their brain isn't fully developed. So they don't know why they're making the decisions that they're making. They're not trying to be smart, smart and sassy and all that kind of stuff. Like they really don't know. But if you ask real questions and actually listen for responses, you can help them to start to identify what's going on. And more importantly, you can identify where you need to affirm your kids, especially your little girls. And it's such a huge opportunity that we miss so often because our first thing to do is to react and fly off at the handle and cut them down and call them every name in the book. And it's not effective. It's like Dr. Phil used to be like, how's that working out for you?
Mm-hmm.
It's not. But we keep doing it. That's the definition of insanity. We're continuing to perpetuate this generational cycle of abusing our kids, of traumatizing our little girls, and we're not producing better results because all we're doing is creating exactly what happened with us.
Yep. That
What you
social
think?
emotional learning is key in the house, and resolving a conflict, that's a skill.
Hmm.
That's something that you learn with trial and error, and you learn your triggers and you learn how to respond and what you give your energy and attention to. That is a skill.
Right,
And we have just seen these companies just perpetuate and show this over and over and over again. And then you wonder why we're in this situation. And to your point about how our kids' brains are not, fully developed, there's some studies saying that the kids are spending 7 to 9 hours on a screen.
yeah,
So when your child is 7 to 9 hours on a screen, whether that's a video game, to the tablet, to the computer, to the cell phone, whatever have you, what is being programmed and developed in their brains then?
right, yeah. Some disconnection from social interaction and the inability to have these types of conversations because I'm not having conversations. I'm sitting here on a screen, right? Um, so then the additional thing that I thought about with this communication piece, and this is like I'm gonna call it a trigger for me. So we lose our stuff so badly because things have to do with sex, right? So again, Cuties is the setting is in France, and the way that um, think about sexuality and bodies and all that is different than we do here in America. However, what was portrayed in the movie was modesty, right? So her family, Ami's family, the main character in the movie, they are Muslim, and they are, preaching modesty and covering your body and what have you. And that's totally fine. Like if that's your thing, whatever. Um, it's not about that. But the issue becomes not having the conversation about the natural process of adolescence, puberty, recognizing that the body is changing, dealing with the changing hormones and all the feelings that come along with that, the natural curiosity for what is happening with me. So like she got her period during the movie. There was no conversation about what that means. There's no conversation about how you handle this. There's no conversation about how do you feel about this, right? It was just kind of, oh, she got a period. Now you're a woman, right? So it creates this shaming around something that should be natural, right? So let's kind of, I want to kind of shift into providing some strategies within this conversation. So one of my pet peeves is when we don't call body parts, right? So a part of this is the scientist in me that, my bachelor's degree is in biology and specializing in human anatomy and physiology. So it's very black and white for me. Like it's not this all this gray space, right? So we have body parts, right? So women have breasts, women have a vagina, right? Men have a penis. Like this is like basic stuff, right? So what we fail to do is, right, when kids are really little, we'll say things to them like your private parts, which okay, as long as they know what those private parts are. But then we give little cute names, so we'll be like your pocketbook or your wee wee or something else as opposed to what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I would meet with my middle school girls and we would talk about these things, I would say to them, "So you have a vagina, okay? That's that's what it's called. It's called a vagina. Go ahead and say it, vagina. Yes, yes, you have a vagina. And then the boys, they have penises. Yes, we're gonna say penis. Penis. That's what it's called, right? These are breasts that you have, not boobs, not titties. These are breasts, right? We're gonna call them what they are. So a part of the reason why we want to do that is because we want to teach our kids to have agency over their bodies. And by that I mean they should be able to communicate with zero misunderstanding about what is going on with them, right? They should be able to name, right? Because we're always, a lot of times as parents, very concerned about whether somebody touched you and did they touch you? Touch you where? Did somebody touch your vagina and you didn't like it? Did somebody touch your penis and you weren't okay with it, right? But when we start using these cute little pet names, it makes it's confusing because what are we talking about right now? So if you call it a pocketbook and you call it your cootie coo, right? Then what is we talking about? But we, for some reason, as adults, feel like this is some type of stigma that we have to hold up in not being able to call our body parts what they are. So, at a very young age, is the time that you can start teaching your kids what their body is called, right? So then on top of that, we get into thinking about these processes that are happening. So we're thinking about puberty, we're thinking about hormones, like we're thinking about all of the things that are happening. And our kids can't come to us and say, I saw a boy that I liked and I felt something like inside. I don't know what happened, but I felt something, or I saw this girl and she, made me feel some type of way, parent. I don't know what to do that. Or our boys can't come to us and say, I like somebody. Like I had a wet dream last night, right? We're not allowing our kids to have the freedom to have these conversations because we are afraid that if we have the conversation with them, we're going to plant the thoughts in their minds when it's actually the opposite. Because research shows that kids that are comfortable having these types of conversations are less likely to have sex at an early age because it's not like this thing that you have to like demystify, right? It's not like this big old thing where they feel like they have to hide it. It's just natural. They talk about what's happening, right? So one of the things that we can do is normalize having those conversations. But then back to a point that you made earlier. So we've made every attempt, right, to lay the foundation to be able to have these conversations. Always anticipate, in my opinion, that they're going to confirm whatever it was that you thought. So if you think that your child is having sex, then the question would be, are you having sex? They're gonna say one or two things, yes or no, right? If you've laid that foundation, then they're more likely to tell you the truth. But they have to know that you're not going to lose your whole mind when they say yes. Or they might say, no, but I'm thinking about it. I think about it a lot. And I don't mean to think about it. I don't really know what's happening to me. Or asking your kids, and let me say this, is that most kids' first exposure is through pornography as early as second grade, probably early
Mm-hmm.
in some places, right? In second grade, kids are 8. So, as early as second grade, kids are being exposed to pornography, right? Again, kids have devices at an earlier age. It's no longer where you have to go find a tape, in somebody's basement hidden under the thing, like it's very, very easy for them to access. So, once they have been exposed to pornography, understand that their idea and understanding of sex is already going to be jaded. So then it's our job to have that conversation to help them understand that sex is actually a good thing. That's how you got here. You would not be here if I did not have the sex. Like that's where babies come from, right? So let me ask you, did you have a conversation with your dad about sex?
So during the time it was my puberty, I went to the bookstore with him, and that's how I learned about my period is by reading a book. We didn't really have an in-depth conversation at all. He was not a man of a lot of words,
Mm,
so those like open and transparent conversations never really happened in the house.
yeah. And how did that make you feel as a girl trying to figure these things out?
It made me curious because during that time, you know there was things on TV like that was
Mm,
Jerry Springer had people flashing stuff on TV, and there was stuff that would come on at night that you can have access
mhm.
to. So there was stuff out there to I searched, I looked because I
Yeah.
wanted to know,
Mhm.
and our kids are doing it.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, it's to the point where they have warehouses and warehouses of data points for just Pornhub.
Yeah.
And they're literally airdropping images at school,
Mhm.
which is a completely different world than it was 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Technology has changed so much. And the question is, are we really prepared for it? And
Right.
do we really know what we've been given these tech companies access to?
Mhm. Yeah. It's we're not trying to scare you all, but it is scary because it's so accessible. So then what you said is it made me curious, which is natural. right? Natural curiosity, like curiosity is a scientific habit of mind. All scientists are curious, right? That's something that we want our kids to have. But then I ask you, do you want your kids to get the answers to their curiosity through you or through these internets and their friends? Because I don't know how, how kids really made these days, but back in my day, I had to go to my friends, and my friends was dumb, child. They ain't know nothing. Okay. So if I recognize that my child has natural questions, that they're curious, wouldn't it be in my best interest to be like, let's sit down and have a conversation? So that I can prevent what I think I'm trying to prevent by avoiding it or beating the life out of them, where neither of these have satisfied their curiosity, so they still gonna go look. So then the question is, what does that sound like? Have you watched pornography, you say, to your child? Have you watched any of things, or have you seen people having sex on the phone or somewhere else? Because let me tell you, they having the oral sex on the back of the school bus. I just want you to know. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As early, I'm gonna say again, as second grade. They're 8. Okay. So are you asking those questions? And again, you might as well just anticipate that they're gonna say yes. Yes, I have seen somebody, I saw somebody put their penis in this girl's mouth. So now what? Okay. So what did you think about that? You might ask. Again, let them talk. And I think sometimes we get nervous about giving too much information, but if you let them guide the conversation, then you get to temper how much information is too much information. So ask them, what did you think about that? How did that make you feel? Is that something that you feel like you would want to do or have somebody do to you? Why do you think that? This is a very different tone from what we normally do. Because
Mm-hmm.
we normally screaming and hollering. And the moment that you lose your sensibility is the moment that they're like, whoof, can't talk to you about that. So
Yep.
now you won't know anything at all. Please trust and believe they're going to lie to you for the next 10, 15 years
Yeah.
about anything having to do with sex.
Well, anytime that they told the truth, they got in trouble. So
Hmm.
now I'm a lie,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then
Yet
upset
another
that they're
unintentional
not
lesson.
truthful.
Now you beating them because they lying, but when they told you the truth, you beat them. So at least, if I'm gonna get beat, then let me get beat where I think that is not so bad because I didn't say everything, as opposed to really saying everything, and then I really get beat since you out here beating people.
No.
So all of this like was in the movie, and I really was just so many things were dancing around in my mind because we have to do better, and we have to approach things differently, and really take, I don't want to say take the power back, but create an environment and a culture with our kids where they don't have to be afraid to talk to us about things. And
Mm.
it's so much misinformation. Like, you remember the scene in the movie where the little girl, they had to rinse her, soap her mouth out.
Yes, with the condom situation. Yes.
Like, first of all, this baby didn't even know what a condom was. She thought it was a balloon. So she playing with
Yeah.
it. Then somebody says it's a condom. Then she loses her whole mind because she doesn't eat. What is that? They tell her she got AIDS because she done picked up the condom. So now they literally washed her mouth out with soap and disinfectant because now she's got AIDS because she picked up a condom that she thought was a balloon. This is the type of misinformation that our kids have. I cannot tell you. So what I used to do with my girls, is every February we would sit down and they would be able to ask me any questions about sex anonymously. Right? I'm just like, write your questions down. I'm gonna answer as many as I possibly can. Every year I'll be like, we just gonna do this week. It would take the whole month because they have so many questions. And their questions would vary from, can you get pregnant if somebody ejaculates in your butt? That's another word that we had to use, was ejaculate, right? And semen. These are words that they don't know, but at any rate, um, if somebody ejaculates in your butt, can you get pregnant? They would ask questions like, can you get pregnant when you're on your period? It was usually centered around pregnancy, a lot of their questions. They would ask questions like, if they have oral sex, are they still a virgin? Then there would every year be questions like, if you get pregnant, can you drink bleach to get rid of the baby? Yeah, love, you gonna get rid of the baby.
Wow.
And you too, baby girl, because you can't, you can't, that's not, you don't drink bleach, boo. No. Well, so and so said that if you drink bleach, then you get rid of the baby. Or they would say things like, if you go pee after you have sex, then you won't get pregnant. No, boo, that's two completely different holes. But this goes back to the point, they don't know their bodies and they haven't been taught to call things what they are. They don't know the vagina from the urethra. They don't know. Gabrielle Union has a book, We're Gonna Need More Wine. And in her book, she talks about how her period had come and she didn't have any pads, so she had to use a tampon. Her friend had given her a tampon. And she said she went to the bathroom to use the tampon and she was taking forever. So the friend is like, what is taking you so long? And she said, it doesn't fit. So she's like, what? It doesn't fit. She's like, it doesn't fit. I don't know what to do. It doesn't fit. She did not know where her vagina was.
Wow.
Like, y'all, how do we expect them to know if we never teach them? How do we expect them to? They don't know. They have taken health and human growth and development and all of that out of schools. How are they supposed to know the anatomy of their body? Do you think that just because you teach a little girl the difference between her urethra and her vagina, that all of a sudden she about to be out here in these streets hoeing? Like, why do we make that jump? That doesn't even make sense. So we remove any opportunity that they have to even know how their body works or to know that something is wrong with their body. So then they wind up with a yeast infection and they have no idea that they have a yeast infection because they don't even know how their body operates normally. They've never paid attention. That's something else we would have to talk about. And this is real life. Like, these are things that happen with women for various reasons, right? It doesn't mean that you're
Mhm.
dirty. It doesn't mean you didn't take a shower. Like, for various reasons, a woman might wind up with a yeast infection. But we're not empowering our girls to understand that. So then they walk away with determinations like, well, maybe something is wrong with me, as opposed to, no, baby girl, that happened. So now let's see, let's figure out what's going on. No, we take the beat the crap out of her approach. So
Mhm.
it's so much.
It is. It is.
It's so much. And I just really want us to do better on so many levels. So let me say this. If y'all have not seen the movie Cuties, we urge you to watch it because it really, really deals with some themes about just coming of age for girls. Um, and dancing, is the least part of it in real life. Like it's really not about the dancing, it's about why that type of dancing. What is the motivation behind it? That's the part that needs to be unpacked and uncovered. Is why is that the motivation? And it goes back to what you said earlier. They feel empty. They want to feel good, and they notice that they get a lot of attention if they do these particular things. What
Yep.
you think?
So I'm thinking about this new social media challenge that I created, and I hope that parents, do it. The challenge is called the Change the Frequency Challenge. So 21 days changes a habit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's based on that. So I just want to pull it up and just kind of share it. So for 21 days, I'm tasking parents to you own this arena here. So for children under the age of 18 years old that still live in your house, they cannot listen or watch the following: porn, and this also includes OnlyFans subscriptions. I'm here
Mm-hmm.
to tell you that there's children under the age of 18 that have YouTube channels, and in their YouTube channels, they advertise their OnlyFans. Um, Gang affiliated internet content in social media pages. So there has been a trend where you'll see groups of kids that will have the same either beginning or the end of their Instagram handle.
Mm-hmm.
That is typically people that are aligning themselves in a group. And so there's different groups that are into the music industry where they want to become aspiring rappers. Well, there's a hidden initiation that is happening from city to city where they are actually committing the crimes that they're saying in their lyrics. And real people are getting hurt, killed, and gunned down every single day across the country because of what's happening underground on social media. The next thing is songs with lyrics that contain crimes that are hurting people. So goes back to the music that I'm talking about, and they typically post, their lyrics and they sing it on Instagram. So you need to be mindful of the pages that your kids are following on Instagram. Violent video games that are harming other humans. So if the video game has a gun in it and is not Duck Hunt, which is a classic by the way,
Right.
um, it don't have your children be involved with that type of gaming. The next thing is YouTube beef. There is so much YouTube beef that's happening where there's kids that are fighting, and there's adults, grown adults that are our age that have realized that this is happening and they've created their lane to exploit and generate money off of it. And so there's 16 and 17-year olds that are meeting up with each other that are fighting, and they have thousands of subscribers and they have money because of brand deals, because parents are not being intentional. You give your kids a Cash App card and they're able to buy what they want. Well, guess what? You have companies that are advertising to your children. So the last thing is for the screen time. The max is 4.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Studies show that kids are on there 7 to 9 hours, and sometimes kids are literally on the game all day, every day, on their phones all day, every day. 4.5 hours. Set that alarm, set that clock. Their settings on different cell phones, and we'll be providing resources to help with that as well. 21 days. And I want you to see how different your conversations are with your child after not being desensitized through this time of just trashy content that is grabbing their attention.
Yeah. Can we add to that taking the phone at night and putting it
Yes.
in the parents' room so
Yeah.
that they can go
Let's
to
add that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Woo! Well, I want to hear some testimonials and what this looks like. Parents, I almost want y'all to journal through this process because man, it's gonna be some folks that's upset. but they're going to be better for it. It's like breaking an addiction. So they're
Yeah.
going cold turkey. So expect for them to have the shakes and everything else, just like they were detoxing. Wow. Wow. Well, we thank y'all, for hanging out. The vibe again is going to be a little bit different because there's some real themes that we need to talk about
Yeah.
and some real things that we need to deal with. We have got to break these cycles. We cannot continue doing the same thing and expecting different results. It is time to come out of the insanity bubble and really deal with what's happening with our babies. So
Yeah. So with that, I just want to thank y'all for tuning in to the whole child, and please share this content, and maybe they won't see the whole hour episode, but at least tell people what's going on. Advocate and make sure that you're checking the child's cell phone. Make sure that, if we're going to talk about the sexualization of children, that we get to the root of that, and let's uplift our children, our kings and queens out here. um, but thank you, Kimberlyn, for joining and always being here. And I like this vibe. So with that being said, let's go.
bye.